Okay, and now we're going to do some CVP analysis on marginal costing from the 2010 ordinary level leaving accountancy paper. So it's question 8. So let's read it. So we have Agnew Limited manufactures a single product. The following is the proposed annual budget for the coming year. So we have sales of 40,000 units giving us 480,000 euros. We have variable costs giving us 160,000 euros. And we have fixed costs giving us 64,000 euros. So our total cost, 224,000 euros. By taking the sales revenue from the total cost, we get a net profit of 256,000 euros. Okay, so let's move into the question. Part A says, calculate the selling price per unit. So what we're looking for here is the selling price for every 1 unit sold. So, into the question. So we have a formula. So we have the sales revenue divided by the number of units sold. So going back to the question, we have sales revenue of 480,000 and total amount of units sold of 40,000 units. So we'll go for 480,000 divided by 40,000 units sold. So we get an answer of €12 per unit as our selling price. So it's €12 for every unit sold of our selling price. So let's go back to the question. Let's go into part B. Calculate the variable cost per unit. So it's similar enough to part A, except in this case we're asked to find the variable cost of every 1 unit sold. Okay, so let's go into part B of the question. So we have another formula. We have variable cost divided by the number of units sold. So let's go back to the question again. So our total variable costs are 160,000 and our number of units sold are 40,000 units. So if we go back in, so we have 160,000 euros divided by 40,000 euros, 40,000 units, sorry, and we get that it's equal to €4 per unit. So for every unit sold, it costs us €4 in variable cost. Back to the question. So part C says calculate the contribution from each unit sold. Now, important to note in this example that the contribution and the contribution margin are the exact same thing. So basically, the definition of the contribution is that it's the amount of money which is left to cover the fixed costs after your variable costs have been covered. So if we go into part C, we have another formula. We have the contribution margin per unit is equal to the selling price per unit minus the variable cost per unit. So in part A and B, we've calculated the selling price per unit of €12 and also the variable cost per unit of €4. So if we do 12 minus 4, we get €8 per unit for our contribution margin. So basically we have €8 left after covering our variable costs to cover 1 unit of fixed costs. So let's get back to the question. So part D says calculate the break-even point in volume, in units, and also in sales value. So what the break-even point is, it's a fixed level at which the company doesn't make a profit but it doesn't make a loss. So it basically breaks even. So going back into the question, we're going to part D. So we have another formula. So first off, the break-even point in units is equal to the fixed cost divided by the contribution margin per unit. So from the question, we have our fixed cost of 64,000 euros. So we'll type that in, 64,000 euros. And our contribution margin, we've actually calculated in part C as €8 per unit. So if we divide that by 8, we get a break-even point in units of 8,000 units. Then we're asked to get the break-even point in sales value or sales revenue. So we have another formula. We have the quantity, or the break-even point quantity, multiplied by the selling price. So we have 8,000 units. So we have 8,000 units already sold over break-even point in units sold, and from part A we have €12 per unit as our selling price. So if we multiply by 12, we get an answer of €96,000. So basically what these two figures mean is that the 8,000 we have to produce 8,000 units, and at this point then we won't make a profit nor a loss, and at this point our sales revenue will be equal to €96,000. Part E, we have the margin of safety. Back to the question now. So part E, we have calculate the margin of safety in units and sales value if the budgeted sales for the period are 40,000 units. So the margin of safety is basically the amount of units that a company can drop before it goes into a loss-making situation. Right, so in order to calculate this, we have another formula. So the margin of safety in units, firstly, is the budgeted sales minus the break-even point. So from the question, we've been told that the budgeted sales are 40,000 units. Okay. So, and from part D then, we've been told that our break-even point in units is 8,000 units. So if we do 40,000 minus 8,000, we get a margin of safety of 32,000 units. Second part of that question then is getting the sales value, the sales revenue once more. So we have another formula, which is the margin of safety quantity multiplied by the selling price. So by doing this, we have 32,000 units as our margin of safety, and our selling price from part A is €12. So if we do €32,000 multiplied by selling price of €12, we get an answer equal to €384,000 in sales revenue. So basically, the company can afford to drop 32,000 units before being in a loss-making situation, and it can also drop sales revenue by €384,000 before getting into a loss situation also. So we'll go to the final part of the question now. Part F, calculate the level of production that will yield a profit of 120,000. Basically, yield a profit means make a profit. So going into the question, we have another formula for this, which is the targeted profit is the fixed costs plus the targeted profit all over the contribution margin per unit. So let's go back into the question and we can get our fixed costs. So our fixed costs are equal to 64,000. So they're equal to 64,000 plus our targeted profit of 120,000. So 120,000 divided by the contribution margin per unit, which we have calculated in part C. So we have the contribution margin per unit giving us €8 per unit sold. So we divide that by 8, and we get our answer equal to 23,000 units. So what this basically means is that if the company wanted to make €120,000 in profit, we would have to produce 23,000 units. And that's it. Just before you move on to this, it's important as well that you look at the slides previous to this example, and also note as well that there are a number of assumptions to be made with CVP analysis. I wish you best of luck with everything else.